Chapter 3286. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Ling Han didn't think it was reliable, but he didn't want to shatter the other party's confidence because he firmly believed that his strength would surpass the Guardian General one day. If his thoughts were known by others, they would definitely say that he was delusional. Although the Guardian General wasn't the strongest in the engravement realm, he had never tasted defeat. This was because no one could break through his defense. However, Ling Han didn't think so. If the Guardian General's defense was invincible, he wouldn't have succumbed to the current emperor. Therefore, there was no such thing as an invincible defense. It was just a matter of whether one's attack power was high enough. All right. Ling Han nodded. He was quite interested in array formations anyway. Niu Huaqing was a little excited. He rubbed his hands and said, "From today onwards, this old man will give you special training. One day, you will use the array formations that this old man has researched to beat that iron lump to the point of kneeling and begging for mercy." Ling Han couldn't bear to spoil his fun, so he nodded and smiled. "I want to take you as my master." Niu Huaqing shook his head. "You're a monster, and your future is limitless. This old man can only give you a few temporary pointers on array formations. There's no need for you to take me as your master, lest the future generations say that this old man is shameless." Ling Han only smiled. His respect for Niu Huaqing was more of a kind of friendship despite the difference in age. Moreover, in this world, whether it's martial art, array Dao, or alchemy Dao, they're all in the early stages. We've only glimpsed the edge of the great Dao. Who is qualified to be called a master? Niu Huaqing said with great emotion. Ling Han was surprised. He didn't expect Niu Huaqing to have this kind of understanding. "Old man Niu, why do you think so?" Niu Huaqing thought about it and said, "This old man once entered a historical site when he was young. It could be said to be magical. I clearly entered from the wilderness, but after I passed through a door, I found myself in a vast swamp. That was definitely not an illusion," he emphasized. It was spatial technology. A door is equivalent to a spatial wormhole. It's incomparably magical. His face was full of excitement. "This kind of technology is something that even an array grandmaster like me can't understand at all. It seems like the world we have touched is just the tip of the iceberg." Ling Han's interest was piqued as well, and he said, "The Varja General and the others have been in the engravement realm for at least 60 to 70 years, and we are only in the early stages of a great era. Why haven't the Varja General and the others taken another step forward?" This was very unreasonable. Those who could stand out now must be geniuses in martial art, so why was it that they were still progressing so slowly in the early stages of martial art? "Good question." Niu Huaqing nodded, revealing a hint of admiration. "I've also researched this question. Around 90 years ago, Iron Lump and the others had already stepped into the engravement realm. But after all these years, they've only reached 5 veins at most. Why? According to this old man's speculation, it's because of the environment." "Oh." Ling Han's eyes lit up. "Please elaborate." "We'll have to start from 120 years ago." Niu Huaqing cleared his throat. Before this point in time, there had never been a single cultivator on Heavenly Ocean Planet. But in fact, some cultivation techniques and even arrays had already been passed down. Ling Han was surprised. There had been cultivation techniques passed down, and there had been arrays in the world, but no one had mastered them. Wasn't this strange? However, after the time node, beasts began to rapidly evolve, and so did humans, Niu Huaqing said solemnly. So, this old man speculated that this was because the environment of the world had changed. If you want to cultivate, you have to sense the power of heaven and earth, right? But in the past, this didn't exist at all, so how could you sense it and cultivate? It's the same with arrays. You need to borrow the power of heaven and earth, but there is no power to borrow. The array base is just a few broken stones and broken iron rods. This explanation was very reasonable. Just like in the Yuan world, there were only cultivation techniques, but there was no spiritual power, so how could one cultivate? Ling Han drew inferences and said, "Old man, what you mean is that although we are still at the beginning of the myriad Daos, because the changes in the environment of the world have not caught up, the emergence of higher-level martial artists is limited, And the number of high-level martial artists is also very small. That's right. Niu Huiqing nodded, full of admiration. It was comfortable to talk to smart people, because they could understand with a hint, and Ling Han could draw inferences, which made it even more pleasant. So, this is your chance to catch up quickly. The old man said, Iron Lump and the others have nowhere to go, so it's equivalent to waiting for you in place. Ling Han nodded, then smiled and said, I'm afraid that when I reach their level, the environment of the world will still not change, and that will be depressing. The path of martial art was clearly very long, but it was limited by the environment of the world and could not move forward. Just thinking about it made people feel depressed. It won't. Niu Huiqing shook his head. Since the world has already recovered, then this process cannot stop. It is only a temporary pause now, like the calm before a storm, but once it starts again, it will definitely be incomparably fierce. So, now is the best time to catch up. Indeed. Ling Han agreed. At this time, if he could not catch up quickly, it would be like when he first entered the celestial realm. Any random person would be much stronger than him, and the time needed to reach the 9 heavens would be calculated in hundreds of millions of years. So, now, every minute and every second was incomparably precious. If he was not careful, he would fall behind. When the environment of the world changed again, and a great era rolled in, then the people behind would be left further and further behind. That's right, old man, how did you come in? Ling Han was surprised. Entering the academy required fingerprints. Niu Huiqing sneered, and with a look of disdain, he said, this academy's formation was set up by this old man. Oh, no wonder. The old man could completely not take the normal path, and the defensive formation would not even be activated, so it would be like walking on flat ground. Come, kid, this old man will teach you formations, said Niu Huiqing. Originally, he did not intend to personally teach Ling Han formations, but wanted to let Ling Han first mix around in the Hidden Tiger City's Formation Association for a period of time. Only when he became a mid-level or even a high-level formation master would he personally teach him. But who would have thought that Hidden Tiger City would actually encounter such a catastrophe? There were many things that Ling Han had to focus on, but since Niu Huiqing was so excited, Ling Han did not want to disappoint him. Anyway, it did not matter what he learned, so he would first learn formations for a few days. Niu Huiqing was a genius in formations, but being a genius did not mean that he was a qualified teacher. He did not care whether Ling Han understood or not, and simply explained all his understanding of formations to Ling Han, so that Ling Han could remember it by heart and then put it into practice. If there was anything he did not understand, Ling Han could ask him. Fortunately, Ling Han was really monstrous. How many years had he stayed in the Divine Stone? Martial art, Pill Dao, Formation Dao, which one was he not proficient in? So, all he needed to do was to absorb knowledge. After opening a door, he would be able to grow quickly, and at an astonishing speed. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3288. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Ling Han nodded. To be more precise, it's an 11-fold increase in effect. Shenyuan Dinghua felt his scalp turn numb. What did that mean? A martial artist's secret energy was stored in their meridians. Meridians were only so wide, and the amount they could store was naturally effective. But once it was used up, it was gone. So martial artists would run into a very awkward problem as they fought. Their strength would suddenly disappear, and even if they had the upper hand, they would instantly lose the advantage. Losing or even dying was very normal. At that time, the qi returning pill would come in handy. It was equivalent to prolonging one's life. Although there was no limit to how many qi returning pills one could consume, there was a problem with the conversion rate. Even if you ate 1 or 10 at the same time, the amount that could be converted into secret energy was basically the same. So if this 11-fold increase in effect was taken out, blood transformation experts would fight to the death over it. Ling Han, do you still have more of these qi returning pills? Asked Shenyuan Dinghua. He could smell the immense value within them. Ling Han nodded. I still have a few. Can you sell them to me? Asked Shenyuan Dinghua expectantly. Ling Han smiled slightly. I won't sell them, but we can work together to do business. How? Asked Shenyuan Dingwa. I have 10 improved versions of return chi pills here. You can take them to the auction and hire an alchemist to concoct improved versions of return chi pills at the same time. When it becomes a hit, we'll set up a limited sale or something like that, Ling Han said, smiling. Shenyuan Dingwa was startled. You mean you'll take out the pill formula? This was even more shocking than Ling Han possessing an improved chi returning pill. Who wouldn't hide a pill formula? As a secret technique of their sect, who would take it out for others to learn? Ling Han didn't care at all. The Grand Dao had just begun to flourish, and the chi returning pill was only worth a bit of money now. In the future, no one would care about it. Therefore, he naturally had to take advantage of this opportunity to make a fortune. Aside from the chi returning pill, there were also the secret power pill and the pulse probing pill, which he had improved. He had originally given them to Mo Guohao, but Mo Guohao had hung them up in Hidden Tiger City. You really have to be willing. Shenyuan Dingwa's eyes lit up. To him, selling an improved version of the chi recovery pill wasn't just a matter of making money. It would also increase his standing with the Grand Marshal Shenyuan, and perhaps even gain the favor of the Sage Emperor. The significance of this was completely different. Ling Han nodded and said, if you're not willing, then why should I say so much to you? Ha ha, good. Shenyuan Dingwa was overjoyed. He had only come to see Ling Han to show his respect. He hadn't expected to reap such unexpected rewards. Then how should we split it? He looked at Ling Han. In this matter, Ling Han was the leader. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, not only will I provide the method to refine the chi replenishing pill, I will also provide the secret power pill and the meridian probing pill, which are all improved versions. You can send someone to test their effects. As for the split, how about half and half? He would only provide 3 pill recipes and take half of the profits. That wasn't a low ratio. Shenyuan Dingwa thought about it and immediately nodded. All right. If it was anyone else, in any other business, wouldn't it be a joke if they didn't put in a bit of effort and took half of the profits? But this was different. Aside from making money, there was also a greater political significance. So even if he didn't make a single cent, Shenyuan Dingwa was actually willing to do it. Moreover, the improved chi recovery pill would definitely dominate the pill market. It would sell for several times the original price, and even a tenth of the profit would be a considerable amount. Thinking of this, the last bit of unwillingness in Shenyuan Dingwa's heart dissipated. Money, fame, and prestige. This was practically a gold ingot that had fallen from the sky. Ling Han directly handed the 3 pill recipes to Shenyuan Dingwa. Don't doubt the people you use, and don't use the people you doubt. This was his principle. Shenyuan Dingwa naturally had a higher opinion of Ling Han. This young man really knew how to conduct himself. Such trust made him a little excited, and he wanted to dig his heart out with Ling Han. Ling Han, there's a place I'm not sure if you're interested in going, he suddenly said, deciding to return the favor. Oh, what place? Ling Han asked, a strange expression on his face. This guy couldn't be thinking of inviting him to a brothel to celebrate, could he? A catacomb that was discovered not long ago, Shenyuan Dingwa said. Relics of the previous civilization? Ling Han asked. Probably not. Shenyuan Dingwa shook his head. There are 3 levels to the catacomb, and a large number of purple wasps live there. Ling Han had never heard of purple wasps. Shenyuan Dingwa laughed and said, the purple wasps are a type of demonic beast. At most, they are at the blood transformation realm, but because they live in groups, their numbers are enormous. Let alone the bone pinnacle realm, even the engravement realm would have a headache. However, the honey brewed by the purple wasps is an incomparably precious material for body tempering. Shenyuan Dingwa continued, we've sent a mini drone into the catacomb to investigate. There's a lot of honey inside, a lot. Furthermore, there's a vermilion fruit on the 3rd level of the catacomb. According to our estimations, it's at least 1,000 years old. Ling Han was delighted. The vermilion fruit was a miraculous medicine that could strengthen one's life force. If he wanted to break through to the 2nd transformation, the vermilion fruit would be a timely help. What's the result? He asked. Shenyuan Dingwa nodded. If you break through to the second transformation in the future, the 1,000-year vermilion fruit will be of great use. All right. Ling Han immediately agreed, then asked, when do we leave? Shenyuan Dinghua could not help but laugh. Why are you even more anxious than me? He did not keep Ling Han in suspense. We'll leave in 10 days. We need to be fully prepared. There were millions of purple wasps in the catacomb, and they were at least at the illuminating pulse realm. There were also quite a number at the blood transformation realm, and their venom was fatal. Thus, even an engravement realm cultivator would be in trouble if he entered. The only one who could force his way through was the Vaja general. His physique was incomparably strong, and no matter how many attacks came, it would be like a light breeze. However, the Vaja general was guarding the borders, so how could he leave everything behind just to get some honey? Thus, a few blood transformation realm cultivators had to be fully prepared before entering the catacomb. Otherwise, they might lose their lives. Ling Han was not afraid. He had the spirit-nurturing gourd. At most, he could hide inside. He believed that the purple wasps were not intelligent enough to discover the secrets of the spirit-nurturing gourd. Of course, he would not reveal the secret of the spirit-nurturing gourd. Just its spatial attribute alone made it incomparably valuable, not to mention its ability to nurture one's consciousness. Let's wait. Taking advantage of these few days, Ling Han actively refined pills. These were not for sale, and he would only use them for himself. He calculated the time. There was still a month before he passed the test. Thus, he would return from the catacomb and get certified as an array master. It would be just in time for him to participate in the array Dao competition. In just 7 days, the auction for the improved Qi returning pill began. An ordinary Qi returning pill was sold for 10,000 Shenbei coins, which was already very expensive. After all, it was a consumable item. However, the highest price for the improved Qi returning pill was 230,000, and the lowest was 200,000. After Ling Han found out, he smiled slightly. He could happily earn money again. Reading on the phone is more refreshing. Chapter 3289. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Cithither improved version of the Qi recovery pill was sold at such a high price because of its low quantity. However, once it could be mass-produced, the price would definitely drop, but it wouldn't be difficult to sell it for 100,000. The key was the cost. In terms of ingredients, it would cost about 17,000 Shenbei coins per furnace, and the finished product would be 3 to 4 pills. In theory, the cost of one pill would be around 5,000, but considering that only Ling Han could achieve a 100% success rate in pill formation, the cost would definitely rise. According to the 50% success rate, the cost of the ingredients would be 10,000, and the labor would be another 10,000, so the net profit would be 80,000. Ling Han would get 40,000 for half of it. The key was that Ling Han didn't need to move a finger, and he could earn 40,000 for every pill he sold. Naturally, it would be great. Moreover, there was the improved version of the Mystic Power Pill and the Pulse Exploring Pill. Although the price of each pill was lower, the demand was greater, and he believed that the profit would not be small. This was just the beginning, and he could improve more pill recipes in the future. Alright, the problem of money was not to be considered for now. The problem now was spending money. He was looking for the remaining 7 main ingredients to concoct the soul separation pill. He already had an idea. As expected of the imperial capital, as long as you had money, there was nothing you couldn't buy. After another 3 days, Shenyuan Dinghua came to find him, and he could set off. Ling Han asked Lian Shuarong to take care of Summon Snow on his behalf, and he set off alone. After some thought, he did not bring that little lecherous pig with him. Though bringing this little lecherous pig would increase his safety factor, it would also increase the factor of instability at the same time. Forget it, it would be better to let it continue to harm the female students and take advantage of them. Ling Han and Shenyuan Dinghua first arrived at the entrance of the academy to meet up with the others. Not long after, a tall and sturdy young man appeared, looking about 24 or 25 years old. Come, let me introduce you. Shenyuan Dinghua said, this is the 7th grandson of the Vaja general, Qin Xinghua. Ling Han nodded and said, Brother Qin. No wonder his physique was so shocking. As the descendant of the Vaja general, he must be an expert in body refinement. Qin Xinghua didn't have any dissatisfaction. Although Ling Han didn't have much status, his potential was too great. He was known as the second Hong Butian, and his future was limitless, so it was normal for him to be arrogant. He also nodded at Ling Han, and did not say anything else. Ling Han knew that Shenyuan Dinghua must have paid a certain price for him to be able to squeeze his way into the cave. Otherwise, who would dare bring so many people? He looked at Shenyuan Dinghua, and Shenyuan Dinghua smiled at him. There was no need for words. Stop flirting in front of me, you two. If you want to be gay, hurry up and get a room. Qin Xinghua laughed. That mouth of yours. Shenyuan Dinghua shook his head. Logically speaking, Qin Xinghua and Shenyuan Dinghua were from different generations, but they didn't seem to care about seniority. Not long after, another person arrived. However, this time, it was a charming woman. Shenyuan Dinghua immediately whispered into Ling Han's ear, "This is Eclipse Moon's granddaughter, Yin Xiujing." Ling Han nodded inwardly. Eclipse Moon was the only female of the four marshals, and she had the fewest offspring. After all, she couldn't just give birth for no reason. However, although she only had one son, this son had countless wives and concubines, giving her many grandchildren. This Yin Xiujing was one of the most outstanding. Try not to talk to her. This Poison Rose's favorite thing to do is to seduce people until they're speechless, and then stomp them into the ground, Shenyuan Dinghua added. Ah. What, are you saying bad things about me? Yin Xiujing walked over, twisting her slender waist. Her figure was extremely hot, and she was small in all the right places. Her waist was so small that it could only be grasped with one hand. However, she also had a plump but that was like a honey peach, twisting and turning in a flirtatious manner. Shenyuan Dinghua and Qin Xinghua purposely turned their faces away. This was called out of sight, out of mind. Only Ling Han maintained a calm smile, and didn't even avert his gaze. Yin Xiujing's beautiful eyes lit up. Shenyuan Dinghua and Qin Xinghua could be considered her old friends. They already knew of her personality, so she couldn't play around with them. She was just feeling bored, and now there was a newcomer. Now, she didn't have to worry about the long journey, and how hard it would be to pass the time. "Oh, so this is Ling Han?" she said with a smile, revealing a set of snow-white teeth. There was a seductive charm to it. A natural foxy charm. Faced with this kind of charm, 9 out of 10 men would definitely not be able to control themselves. However, Ling Han was used to seeing all kinds of beauties. Some were as cold as frost, some were as passionate as fire, and some were as cold as frost on the surface, but when they were aroused, they would be as passionate as fire. How could he lose his composure in front of Yin Xiujing? Senior apprentice Sister Yin. He smiled. "Oh, why are you acting like an outsider? Call me big sister," Yin Xiujing said coquettishly, her voice full of temptation. Shenyuan Dinghua and Qin Xinghua looked at each other, thinking that this female vixen was going to cause trouble again. However, they didn't want to attract trouble, so naturally, they didn't have the slightest intention of interrupting. In any case, Yin Xiujing had a sense of propriety. At most, she would make people burn and unable to vent, but she wouldn't kill or cripple them. Ling Han only smiled. What a joke. He was an old monster who had lived for more than an epoch in the Yuan world. How could he call a 20-year-old girl his big sister? Even if the flow of time was different, it was still impossible. The more Ling Han resisted, the more interested Yin Xiujing became. This was because after she conquered Ling Han, she would feel more accomplished. Hehehe, looks like I'm the last one. Another young man appeared. He was carrying a thick bundle on his back. Hey, Tang Yu, you didn't manage to borrow a spatial artifact? Qin Xinghua asked. Shenyuan Dinghua leaned over and introduced to Ling Han, that's the Tiancan Marshal's 21st grandson. Tang Yu shook her head. Don't say it. My old man won't lend me the spatial artifact. How can I steal it? Ling Han looked around. Shenyuan Dinghua, Qin Xinghua, and Yin Xiujing didn't bring any luggage. Based on this, they should have borrowed a spatial artifact. Otherwise, even with their status, they wouldn't have been able to obtain such a treasure. With this comparison, he could see how lucky he was. All right, let's go, Shenyuan Dingwa said. Shenyuan Dingwa said, also helping Ling Han out of the predicament, because Yin Xiujing was about to use all her weapons. 5 people set off. 4 of them were descendants of the 4 marshals. The others didn't even have the qualifications to be their companions. They attached great importance to this operation. They didn't even bring along their trusted aides, because they didn't want to share any of their gains. Also, it was a matter of strength. If they weren't strong enough, they would only be a burden. After all, there were millions of purple wasps in the cavern. How could they compete in numbers? Hee. From this, it could be seen that Shenyuan Dingwa had paid a hefty price to bring Ling Han along. He had sacrificed some of his own benefits. Ling Han nodded. Shenyuan Dingwa was a person who knew when to advance and when to retreat. He was worth befriending. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3290. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC. Among Ling Han's group, there were 4 people of high status. Even though they were only one of the descendants of the 4 great marshals, they could easily get their hands on a small spaceship. Spaceships were fundamentally different from the spaceships of technological civilizations. They were powered by formations and consumed jade seeds, unlike spaceships that used various scientific principles. Without a doubt, spaceships were more suitable for this environment because the magnetic fields around the world were very chaotic. It was easy for the instruments of spaceships to malfunction and cause an air crash. However, even in the imperial capital, there were only a few spaceships, and they were strictly controlled. If Shenyuan Dingwa and the others didn't have enough influence, it would be impossible to borrow a spaceship. This spaceship wasn't big. It was the same model as the one Ling Han used to come to the imperial capital. However, there were only 5 of them, so they didn't have to worry about not having enough rooms. The cave was quite far from the imperial capital. Even though they had a spaceship traversing the vast lakes and mountains, it still took them 7 days to reach the cave. On the way, they used their photon computers to watch the images taken by the drones, so they had a general understanding of the place. Ling Han had already gone on this kind of adventure countless times. Very soon, he had formed a complete picture of the cave in his mind. He believed that even if he closed his eyes, he would still be able to walk from the beginning to the end, and would definitely not run into a wall. What he had lost was merely power. The spaceship stopped, and they disembarked. The spaceship would wait for them there. They would have to walk the rest of the way by themselves. The spaceship wouldn't fly there. On the way, Yin Xiujing teased Ling Han in every possible way. She would even enter his room at night and put on a seductive pose, but Ling Han was always polite and courteous. He didn't lose his composure in the slightest, which made Yin Xiujing extremely depressed. If they continued, she would really have to take off her clothes. How could that be possible? She only liked to play, but she didn't have the intention to sacrifice her body or her body. She seriously suspected that Ling Han's sexual orientation was abnormal. Otherwise, why would he be so cold to her? After making up her mind, her sense of failure was greatly reduced. The 5 of them walked through the mountain. There was no path here because there were no signs of human habitation. There were only trees and weeds, and the rocks were craggy. If they didn't have blood transformation strength, just this last step would have been enough to stop them from returning. The biggest problem for them was the speed of their journey. It took them half a day to travel 100 miles before they finally arrived at their destination. Even if they still had some of that specially refined oil, how could these wasps not be on guard after being raided? Beasts were intelligent, especially those at the blood transformation realm. Their intelligence was definitely not low. Therefore, it was enough to harvest once. Don't be greedy. I want to go back again, Ling Han said. Ling Han, don't think we can go a second or a third time just because our first time went so smoothly, Tang Yu said seriously. She only said this because of Shenyuan Dingwa. Otherwise, she wouldn't care if you lived or died. Ling Han smiled. My goal isn't the honey, but the vermilion fruit on the 3rd level of the cave. Right, you're only at the first transformation. You need this precious fruit that can increase your qi. Qin Xinghua nodded. I still think it's too dangerous. Tang Yu shook her head. No worries, I'll be careful. Ling Han smiled. I'm fully prepared for this. Let's meet again in the capital. He insisted, and the four of them couldn't do anything about it. They decided to wait for him for 5 days. After 5 days, they would start the spaceship and return to the capital. Ling Han agreed, and left by himself. Shenyuan Dinghua and the others didn't share the honey with him. That was understandable. If they gave it to him, and he died in the beehive, wouldn't that be a great waste? This kind of physique training treasure was too precious. Money couldn't buy it. It was no wonder the four of them were so stingy. Ling Han didn't take it to heart. He didn't plan on taking advantage of them in the first place. He didn't do anything, so why should he get a share? He could just go and get it himself. Little brother Han, you have to come back safely. I haven't gotten it yet, Yin Xiujing said sweetly on the spaceship after Ling Han took a few steps. Ling Han almost tripped and fell. This woman was really too unreserved. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3292. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Sisishio, Shio. The queen bee's body trembled slightly, and 4 sharp stingers shot out from its body towards Ling Han. So fast. Ling Han hurriedly used the shuttle steps to dodge, and instantly burst out at twice the speed of sound, dodging the 4 stingers. He did not even try to see if he could block the attack of an ultimate bone-level warrior. Without hesitation, he took out a weapon-nurturing leaf and threw it at the queen bee. Buzz, the leaf glowed and turned into a large halberd, beginning its attack. At the same time, the swarm of demonic bees, which had been silent all this while, also began to attack. They charged towards Ling Han, and the sheer number of them made him panic. F***ck, I'm bleeding a lot today. Ling Han threw out another weapon-nurturing leaf, wanting to carve out a path of blood. He snatched the honey first. Although most of the bees were blocked by the weapon-nurturing leaf, even a few that slipped through were enough to give him a headache. Pain. He clenched his teeth. His body was not strong enough against the attack of a blood transformation level, and he instantly felt a needle-like pain. Ignoring it, he snatched a lot of honey. After taking about a third of it, he hid in the spirit-nurturing gourd. He looked at his body and clenched his teeth. His clothes were full of holes, naturally caused by the stingers of the demonic bees. When he tore off his clothes, his body was also full of needle-like holes, leaving countless black spots. The stingers of the demonic bees were poisonous. Ling Han immediately felt dizzy. He had already taken 100 transformation pill before this, or he would not have lasted this long. He would have fainted long ago. He took out another 100 transformation pill, and at the same time used the Monkey King's technique to force out the poison. This time, he was seriously injured. There was a large amount of bee poison left in his body, and it could even threaten his life. But luckily, he had the 100 transformation pill, and he had healed himself in time, so there should be no problem. He suddenly realized that there was another force coming out of his body, and it was fighting with the bee poison. The two forces clashed, and both were destroyed bit by bit. Ling Han suddenly realized that it was the poison of the soul-separating pill. Using poison to fight poison, the poison of the soul-separating pill was being destroyed. This was a pleasant surprise. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. Presumably, the person who concocted the soul-separating pill also didn't expect that after being poisoned by such a strong poison, he would still seek death and let the demonic bees bite him. He simply suppressed his mystic power and let the soul-separating pill's poison act as the vanguard to fight against the bee poison. He only protected his body to prevent the bee poison from spreading. In the eyes of the poison of the soul-separating pill, this was its territory. Now that there was a new poison, it did not care whether it was harmful or beneficial to Ling Han. In any case, Ling Han was invading its territory. Naturally, it treated it as an antidote and would fight back in full force. It had to be said that the poison of the soul-parting pill was very strong. It quickly dissolved the bee venom in his body while only a little bit of it was worn away. That's all. Ling Han smacked his lips. Let's do it again. He took out the essence-nourishing gourd and tried to snatch the honey again. However, the two seal soldier leaves had already used up their energy. When he appeared, no matter if it was the queen bee or the other demon bees, their target was him. Ling Han did not hesitate to throw out another seal soldier leaf. Then, he protected his eyes, nose, and ears as he frantically snatched again. Pain, pain, pain. He wanted to cry out as he was stabbed countless times by the stinger. This time, after snatching a third of the honey, Ling Han entered the essence-nourishing gourd. He continued to use the poison of the soul-parting pill to fight against the bee venom. After spending 2 hours, the bee venom was finally completely dissolved, and the poison of the soul-parting pill was slightly dissolved. If this continued, there would be no need to concoct the antidote. Again, Ling Han came out of the gourd. This time, he rushed towards the vermilion fruit tree. He was attacked crazily, but Ling Han completely ignored it. He just plucked the fruits. After all, there were only a dozen or so it was a piece of cake. Pluck. He entered the essence-nourishing gourd again and felt that the gourd was also attacked. From the hole above his head, he could see that the scenery was constantly changing, but there was no collision when he was in it. It was enough to show how amazing this spatial artifact was. The nurturing of heaven and earth was naturally even more amazing. These demon bees might have guessed that he was hiding in the gourd, or they might have just been venting their anger, so they began to attack the gourd. Ling Han could not help but worry. Could the gourd withstand it? Fortunately, the gourd showed no signs of breaking. From this point of view, it could withstand much more than Ling Han. After a long time, the swarm of bees stopped pestering the gourd and began to move. The queen bee moved away. The honey bee moved away. They were afraid of Ling Han. Although the vermilion fruit could not be moved away, there was no fruit left. At least they would not be able to think about it for many years. Ling Han could not help but feel depressed. He had not completely dissolved the poison of the soul-parting pill. Why were they in such a hurry to leave? He sat down and once again guided the two poisons to fight against each other. However, he immediately found that the soul-parting pill seemed to have analyzed the composition of the bee venom. At first, both sides were annihilated, but in the end, it was actually fusing with the bee venom to strengthen itself. Ling Han gritted his teeth and hurriedly swallowed the 100 transformation pill. Then, he used his own secret power to attack the bee venom and quickly dissolved the bee venom. Even so, the soul-parting pill poison was still 1/10 stronger. Thankfully, he had stopped it in time. Otherwise, it was very possible that the soul-parting pill would return to its original peak strength. In fact, after fusing with the bee venom, its toxicity would mutate, and then it would be even more difficult to dissolve. He came out from the gourd. This place had already become incredibly quiet. Aside from some corpses of bees, there was nothing else. Ling Han walked over to the side of the vermilion fruit tree. He wanted to see if he could move the tree away. Although he could not hope to eat any more fruits for the time being, the Empress and the others still needed a large amount of treasured fruits to come out. Yi. When Ling Han was observing the vermilion fruit tree, he actually discovered that there were formation patterns on the mountain wall behind this tree. Hiss, could it be that there was an ancient ruin behind this tree? Ling Han was instantly moved. If he could obtain some ancient treasures, to say nothing of anything else, he only had to discover a medicinal garden, and he would have made a huge profit. This formation pattern was very complicated. Logically speaking, it should be impossible for Ling Han to decipher it, but the problem was that too much time had passed, and more than 90% of the formation pattern had already been worn away, causing its might to no longer recover. Ancient formation patterns really are awesome. Even if they're broken, they can still display their might. Ling Han sighed emotionally. He began to deduce how he could break this formation pattern and open up a corner that would allow him to enter. Ling Han tried all sorts of methods, but he discovered that this formation pattern did not suppress him at all. It was as if he was a small shrimp, and the formation pattern was a net for a big fish. It was not targeted at him at all. This was easy to deal with. Because the formation pattern was broken, he could use some violent methods to forcefully break it down without worrying about any backlash. Just like that, after a day, he finally completely destroyed this corner of the formation pattern. In fact, He had a feeling that this formation pattern itself was also being worn away. Because of the two forces working together, the speed at which it collapsed increased. Cake, how many years has it been? Grandpa Shu has finally escaped. A voice suddenly rang out from within the mountain. End of chapter. Phone reading is more refreshing. Chapter 3293. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Sisishio, Shio. The queen bee's body trembled slightly, and 4 sharp stingers shot out from its body towards Ling Han. So fast. Ling Han hurriedly used the shuttle steps to dodge, and instantly burst out at twice the speed of sound, dodging the 4 stingers. He did not even try to see if he could block the attack of an ultimate bone-level warrior. Without hesitation, he took out a weapon-nurturing leaf and threw it at the queen bee. Buzz, the leaf glowed and turned into a large halberd, beginning its attack. At the same time, the swarm of demonic bees, which had been silent all this while, also began to attack. They charged towards Ling Han, and the sheer number of them made him panic. F***CK, I'm bleeding a lot today. Ling Han threw out another weapon-nurturing leaf, wanting to carve out a path of blood. He snatched the honey first. Although most of the bees were blocked by the weapon-nurturing leaf, even a few that slipped through were enough to give him a headache. Pain. He clenched his teeth. His body was not strong enough against the attack of a blood transformation level, and he instantly felt a needle-like pain. Ignoring it, he snatched a lot of honey. After taking about a third of it, he hid in the spirit-nurturing gourd. He looked at his body and clenched his teeth. His clothes were full of holes, naturally caused by the stingers of the demonic bees. When he tore off his clothes, his body was also full of needle-like holes, leaving countless black spots. The stingers of the demonic bees were poisonous. Ling Han immediately felt dizzy. This was because he had already taken 100 transformations pill beforehand. Otherwise, he would not have been able to hold on until now, and would have long since passed out. He took out another 100 transformation pill, and at the same time, used the Monkey King's technique to force out the poison. This time, he was seriously injured. There was a large amount of bee venom left in his body, and it could even threaten his life. But luckily, he had the 100 transformation pill, and he had healed himself in time, so there should be no problem. He suddenly realized that there was another force coming out of his body, and it was fighting with the bee venom. The two forces clashed, and both were destroyed bit by bit. Ling Han suddenly realized that it was the poison of the soul-separating pill. Using poison to fight poison, the poison of the soul-separating pill was being destroyed. This was a pleasant surprise. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. Presumably, the person who concocted the soul-separating pill also didn't expect that after being poisoned by such a strong poison, he would still seek death and let the demonic bees bite him. He simply suppressed his mystic power and let the soul-separating pill's poison act as the vanguard to fight against the bee poison. He only protected his body to prevent the bee poison from spreading. In the eyes of the poison of the soul-separating pill, this was its territory. Now that there was a new poison, it did not care whether it was harmful or beneficial to Ling Han. In any case, Ling Han was invading its territory. Naturally, it treated it as an antidote and would fight back in full force. It had to be said that the poison of the soul-parting pill was very strong. It quickly dissolved the bee venom in his body while only a little bit of it was worn away. That's all. Ling Han smacked his lips. Let's do it again. He took out the essence-nourishing gourd and tried to snatch the honey again. However, the 2 seal soldier leaves had already used up their energy. When he appeared, no matter if it was the queen bee or the other demon bees, their target was him. Ling Han did not hesitate to throw out another seal soldier leaf. Then, he protected his eyes, nose, and ears as he frantically snatched again. Pain. He wanted to cry out as he was stabbed countless times by the stinger. This time, after snatching a third of the honey, Ling Han entered the essence-nourishing gourd. He continued to use the poison of the soul-parting pill to fight against the bee venom. After spending 2 hours, the bee venom was finally completely dissolved, and the poison of the soul-parting pill was slightly dissolved. If this continued, there was no need to concoct the antidote. Again. Ling Han came out of the gourd. This time, he rushed towards the vermilion fruit tree. He was attacked crazily, but Ling Han ignored it completely. He just plucked the fruits. After all, there were only a dozen or so it was a piece of cake. Pluck. He entered the essence-nourishing gourd again and felt that the gourd was also attacked. From the hole above his head, he could see that the scenery was constantly changing, but there was no collision when he was in it. It was enough to show how amazing this spatial artifact was. The nurturing of heaven and earth was naturally even more amazing. These demon bees might have guessed that he was hiding in the gourd, or they might have just been venting their anger, so they began to attack the gourd. Ling Han could not help but worry. Could the gourd withstand it? Fortunately, the gourd showed no signs of breaking. From this point, it could withstand it much better than Ling Han. After a long time, the swarm of bees stopped pestering the gourd and began to move. The queen bee moved away. The honey bee moved away. They were afraid of Ling Han. Although the vermilion fruit could not be moved away, there was no fruit left. At least they would not be able to think about it for many years. Ling Han could not help but feel depressed. He had not completely dissolved the poison of the soul-parting pill. Why were they in such a hurry to leave? He sat down and once again guided the two poisons to fight against each other. However, he immediately found that the soul-parting pill seemed to have analyzed the composition of the bee venom. At first, both sides were annihilated, but in the end, it was actually fusing with the bee venom to strengthen itself. Ling Han gritted his teeth and hurriedly swallowed the 100 transformation pill. Then, he used his own secret power to snipe the bee venom and quickly dissolved it. Even so, the soul-parting pill poison was still a tenth stronger. Thankfully, he had stopped it in time. Otherwise, it was very possible that the soul-parting pill would return to its original peak strength. In fact, after fusing with the bee venom, its toxicity would mutate, and then it would be even more difficult to dissolve it. He came out of the gourd. This place had already become incredibly quiet. Aside from some corpses of bees, there was nothing else. Ling Han walked over to the side of the vermilion fruit tree. He wanted to see if he could move the tree away. Although he could not count on eating any more fruits for the time being, the Empress and the others still needed a large amount of treasured fruits to come out. Yi. When Ling Han was observing the vermilion fruit tree, he actually discovered that there were formation patterns on the mountain wall behind this tree. Hiss, could it be that there was an ancient ruin behind this tree? Ling Han was instantly moved. If he could obtain some ancient treasures, to say nothing of anything else, he only had to discover a medicinal garden, and he would have made a huge profit. This formation pattern was very complicated. Logically speaking, it should be impossible for Ling Han to decipher it, but the problem was that too much time had passed, and more than 90% of the formation pattern had already been worn away, causing its might to no longer recover. Ancient formation patterns really are awesome. Even if they're broken, they can still display their might, Ling Han sighed. He began to deduce how he could break this formation pattern and open up a corner that would allow him to enter. Ling Han tried all sorts of methods, but he discovered that this formation pattern did not seem to suppress him at all. It was as if he was a small shrimp, and the formation pattern was like a net that had been laid out for a big fish. It was not targeted at him at all. This was easy to deal with. Because the formation pattern was broken, he could use some violent methods to forcefully break it down without worrying about any backlash. Just like that, a day later, he finally completely destroyed this corner of the formation pattern. In fact, he had a feeling that this formation pattern itself was also being worn away. Thus, the combination of these two methods caused the speed at which it collapsed to increase. Cake, how many years has it been? Grandpa Shu has finally escaped. A voice suddenly rang out from within the mountain. Reading on a mobile phone is more refreshing. Chapter 3294. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CCF*CK. Ling Han cursed in his heart. He didn't seem to have unearthed an ancient ruin, but rather a cage. Now, the thing trapped inside was about to escape. Even though there was a mountain wall between them, he could still feel that this existence was ridiculously powerful. Bang! Before he finished his thought, the cave wall had already broken open, and a head popped out. It was the head of a rat, but it was ridiculously large, no different from a human's head. Instantly, the pressure was like a mountain. Linghan felt like he couldn't breathe. This rat was too powerful. It was definitely not in the extreme bone realm, or even the engraved pattern realm. It seemed like it could kill him with a single thought. This meant that this rat not only had a high realm, but its spiritual energy was also terrifying. Wait a minute, how can this demon rat speak? Linghan had only seen one beast that could speak, and that was the Monkey King. Otherwise, even the strange little perverted pig wouldn't have such an ability. Without hesitation, he flipped his hands. Pa, 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 he threw out 3 pillars, locking the entrance of the cave that the rat had opened. Little human boy. The rat revealed a look of disdain. Kid, you think you can trap me with 3 broken iron pillars? You're too naive. It sniffed and muttered to itself, why is the mystical energy of heaven and earth so poor? It seems like those people weren't able to destroy the foundation of the formation. However, since I can come out, it means that the formation is on the verge of collapse. Damn it, with this kind of environment, how long will it take for me to recover to my peak condition? It looked at Linghan and revealed a sinister expression. I haven't had a sumptuous meal in a long time. I want to taste the taste of the human race. Since I'm free today, I can taste human flesh on such a good day. Human. Hurry up and stick your head over. Linghan used the Monkey King's technique several times and finally calmed down. He smiled faintly. Come out first, I don't have time to play with you. He turned around and ran. This rat's realm was unimaginably high. It was at least in the engraved pattern realm, or even the enlightened aperture realm. From the rat's tone, it seemed to have come from the ancient times and had always been suppressed. Now that it had finally broken free, its strength was naturally terrifying. The current martial art was only in its infancy, but the martial art of the previous civilization had definitely reached a peak. If the two clashed, the contemporary martial art would definitely be crushed. You want to run? The demonic rat said disdainfully. It struggled violently and drilled out of the mountain wall. The strange thing was that the mountain wall behind it seemed to be made of water. The hole rippled twice and actually closed up. Hey! The demonic rat discovered that when it landed, there was actually a vast expanse of white fog in front of it. There was no sign of Linghan. It's actually a psychedelic array. The demon rat gave an "oh" and then coldly snorted. It's just 3 array bases. How can it trap Lord Rat? Its eyes shone, scarlet like flames, directly illuminating the mist. With a single leap, it jumped out of the encirclement of the array base. Then, it opened its mouth and inhaled, immediately forming a terrifying gale. Linghan only felt his feet float, and he was almost sucked back in. He was shocked and hurriedly threw out another weapon-nurturing leaf, slashing at the demonic rat. He fought for this sliver of an opportunity and once again broke into a mad sprint. He used the shuttle steps and ran without any care. The demonic rat stretched out a finger and slashed, and the seal soldier was instantly pushed back dozens of feet. Lord Rat's strength has actually fallen to such a level. Even an extreme bone realm seal soldier cannot destroy it. The demonic rat let out a cry of surprise. Damn it, I actually let that human escape. Forget it, I will first recover my strength. Once I recover, with the current environment, what existence can be Lord Rat's match? At that time, that human will not be able to escape either. Hihi, Lord Rat's innate ability is to dig holes. I was the first one to escape, so all the fortunes here are Lord Rat's. In the past, there was an incomparably powerful dynasty here. Although it has been destroyed, I believe there will be many good things left behind. If Lord Rat can obtain even a tiny bit of fortune, even if it is just a cultivation technique, it will be enough for Lord Rat to rise. As Linghan ran, he did not know how many stone pillars he had crashed into along the way. Fortunately, his skin was thick and his flesh was thick. In the end, the stone pillars were always broken, but he was basically unharmed. After running for a long time, he was finally sure that the demonic rat did not chase after him. He slowed down his pace and did not use the shuttle steps again, but his speed was still very fast. Countless questions surged in his mind. The most puzzling was that he had clearly broken through an array, but why was it that what he obtained was not a treasure, but a demonic rat that had escaped? Most importantly, this demonic rat was not the only demonic beast that had been suppressed. There were more inside, but this demonic rat knew how to dig holes, so it was the first one to escape. No wonder when he was breaking through the array, he felt that the array itself was collapsing. So this demonic rat was working from the inside. In other words, even without Ling Han's help, the demonic rat would have escaped, but it would have taken a little longer. In that case, no one would have known about it. Ling Han ran out of the cave and began to speed up, running as fast as he could. However, before he reached the airship, the sun had already risen. As a cultivation maniac, Ling Han immediately stopped in his tracks and began to cultivate. He believed that he had already lost the demonic rat, so he did not want to waste half an hour. When he was about to stop, he absorbed another strand of purple chi. This time, Ling Han could be sure that purple chi could only be absorbed in the mountains, because he had not absorbed this kind of high-quality energy when he was cultivating in the cave. Why not in the city? In ancient legends, immortals all lived in the mountains. Was it to absorb this kind of higher-level energy? Ling Han thought for a moment, then took out a few pieces of honey and carried them on his back. He pretended to be fine, then continued forward. Not long after, the airship was in sight. Ling Han. Shenyuan Dinghua immediately called out when he saw him, a look of relief on his face. Of course, he did not want to help Ling Han. Although this would allow him to monopolize the 3 improved pill recipes, he believed that working with Ling Han would yield more benefits. Ling Han leapt onto the airship. Let's go, let's go. We're already back. What's the rush? Tang Yu smiled. Ling Han said seriously, let's set sail first. I'll explain later. A single person was a small target, but an airship was huge. Shenyuan Dinghua and the others shivered when they saw how serious he was. They hurriedly ordered their men to set off. What happened, Ling Han? Qin Xinghua asked. Ling Han looked down and said in a low voice, I think I released something terrifying. What do you mean? The 4 asked. Ling Han briefly explained what had happened over the past few days, but he did not reveal the secret of the energy-fostering gourd. He only said that he had been lucky enough to sneak into the depths of the cave and pluck a few cinnabar fruits and some honey. Of course, he had relied on the leaves of the energy-fostering gourd. It was no secret anyway. Then he said that he had broken a formation and released a demonic rat. You know formations too? Reading on the phone is more refreshing. Chapter 3296. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Xiang Bai was currently looking at something, and did not pay any attention to Ling Han. After a while, he finally raised his head, and looked towards Ling Han. Sure, it was as if 2 bolts of lightning had flashed past, so piercing that it was painful to look at. You are Ling Han? Yang Bai stopped what he was doing. I am indeed Ling Han. Ling Han bowed slightly in greeting. This was respect towards an elite. There was only him and Yang Bai here, and there was not even a servant. Yang Bai paused, and then said, Tell me in detail again about the matter regarding that demonic rat. Ling Han nodded, and began to recount from beginning to end. He had already recounted this matter once, so it would naturally be smoother to recount it again now. Moreover, this was a true matter in the first place, and he had merely concealed some details. Yang Bai showed a solemn expression. Are you really sure that the aura of that demonic rat was not weaker than mine? Hong, he released his own aura, and it was as if he could overturn the sea, incredibly frightening. Ling Han's expression was deathly pale. The aura of the engravement tier was really too powerful. However, he had withstood it. He nodded, and said, That's right, that demonic rat's aura was definitely not weaker than Milord's. Furthermore, it was still in a weakened state, and after it recovered, it should be even stronger. Yang Bai tapped his finger on the table, and said, His Majesty the Saint Emperor had long since prophesied that there were powerful demonic beasts suppressed in the various mountains and abyss, but he had not thought that there would be one that had escaped so soon. It's too early, His Majesty the Saint Emperor has not completed his breakthrough. He paused, and then said, Ling Han, though it was you who destroyed the seal, Your discovery of this matter is also a great merit. I will remember this for you. Ling Han nodded. Thank you, my lord. Go. Yang Bai waved him off. Ling Han left. He returned to the academy. There were only a few short days until the new year. He had already celebrated countless New Years, but the significance of this one was obviously different from the previous ones, because this was the first New Year that he had celebrated in the New World. Unfortunately, he didn't have the company of the Empress and the others. Shenyuan Dingguo gave Ling Han a few pieces of honey. This was his harvest from the first level, but Ling Han didn't accept it. First, he had more honey, and the quality was higher. Second, he didn't want to owe Shenyuan Dingguo a favor. However, he still had a good chat with Shenyuan Dingguo, because the improved versions of the Qi replenishing pill, the secret power pill, and the pulse exploring pill had entered the normal sales channel, and business was booming. Aren't you afraid that those alchemists will set up their own shops with the pill formulas? Of course they weren't afraid. With Marshal Xuanyuan's reputation, which alchemist would dare to go against the agreement? Ling Han began to earn a lot of money every day, which also gave him enough money to buy materials to make intermediate and advanced array formations. He wanted to improve his array Dao level. He had bought a few sets of intermediate array formations on the trading platform, and Niu Huiqing had already imparted all the basic, intermediate, and advanced array patterns to him. Now, he only needed to learn how to fuse the array patterns. This was the most difficult part. There were endless changes, and a person might not be able to deduce all the changes even if they exhausted their entire life's effort. However, this was a piece of cake for Ling Han. It was one thing that his spiritual power hadn't improved, but his memory was shockingly good, and his deduction ability was extremely strong. It was just that he couldn't do it for too long. With his current spiritual power, he couldn't support it. Of course, among the intermediate array formations, there was one that could help in the blood transformation realm's cultivation. This was called the 100 Celestial Array, and it also consumed jade seeds as an energy source. However, it was far less helpful than the Nouveau Riche Array for the Meridian Opening realm. After all, the higher the realm, the harder it was to improve. Even the blood transformation realm was still at the initial stage of martial art. This required the combination of elementary and intermediate array patterns. It could be a one-to-one fusion, a one-to-many fusion, and even a many-to-many fusion. The difficulty of inscribing increased drastically. It had only been 3 days, and Ling Han had already completely mastered this formation, and had even created the foundation of the formation. He had already started using this array formation to cultivate. On the other hand, there were pills that could help speed up the blood transformation realm's cultivation. They were similar to the mystic energy pill. At the blood transformation realm, they were called intermediate mystic energy pills. However, the materials needed to refine them were completely different. As usual, Ling Han started to improve the intermediate mystic energy pills. If he wanted to eat, he definitely wanted to eat the best. As he worked hard, the new year arrived as scheduled. The capital was bustling. It was the new year. Whether it was officials, nobles, or ordinary citizens, everyone temporarily put down the burden of life and enjoyed a few rare days of celebration. However, during this new year, many terrifying incidents happened. A few small towns were razed to the ground, and not a single person was left alive. Because these incidents happened before and after the new year, everyone only knew that the internet was down. It wasn't until the nearby townspeople went there that they discovered the tragedy. The news spread back to the capital and created an uproar. The Saint Emperors might dominated the world. Even the most powerful beasts could only retreat from the nation's borders and didn't dare to invade. So many years of peace had passed. First, the crouching tiger city was destroyed by the beast tide. Now, such a tragedy happened. What was going on? Without a doubt, this affected the atmosphere of the new year. But very quickly, an exciting piece of news spread. The Saint Emperor had exited his isolation. Had he broken through? Nobody knew. The Saint Emperor didn't speak, so who dared to ask? At once, everyone calmed down. In everyone's heart, there was an unbreakable thought. That as long as the Saint Emperor is here, no evil can invade the Xianbei nation. Ling Han didn't pay much attention to this. After the new year, the Array Masters competition would begin. He decided to get certified as an Array Master. Out of his expectations, this trip went very smoothly. He didn't encounter any ignorant second generation, nor did he encounter any arrogant geniuses. He successfully passed the test and became the 4,200th official Array Master in the Xianbei nation. Alright, next up is to prepare for the Array Master competition. Theoretically, each city can only send one Array Master to the competition. However, the Emperor has no such restriction. As long as one is certified by the Array Master, then one has the right to participate. Of course, there is another important condition, and that is, one must be below the age of 30. The 1-month deadline that Ling Han gave to Huanxue had passed. The little servant girl had no hope of finding the hidden pulse. So Ling Han allowed her to break through to the realm of blood transformation and gave her 2 cinnabar fruits. For someone with 12 pulses, 1 cinnabar fruit was enough. But who told Ling Han to be so rich? He gave her 2. 1 was good enough, but 1 more was just in case. Every now and then, news of villages being destroyed would spread. Based on the distance, the culprit seemed to be heading towards the Emperor's direction. This infuriated the Saint Emperor. It just so happened that the heaven-traversing general returned to the Emperor's capital to report on the investigation of the hidden Tiger City. The Saint Emperor then sent the heaven-traversing general to quell the chaos. On the 6th day after the new year, Ling Han once again headed towards the Array Master's headquarters. He had already signed up and was here to participate in the competition. Ling Han. A shocked voice arose from behind Ling Han. Yang Jun reading on the phone is more refreshing. Chapter 3297. A Good Romance. BQG 6. See the world is so small. Ling Han immediately understood. Yang Jun was the array genius of Hidden Tiger City, one of the 3 heroes along with Tuoba Tianhuang and Zhong Yangbi. Therefore, he should have been sent out by Hidden Tiger City to participate in the array competition. What he didn't know was that because of Niu Huaqing's interference, Jiyu Tianhua had the intention of letting Ling Han replace him. But before he could report it, a beast tide occurred in Hidden Tiger City. Yang Jun snorted and said, "What are you doing here?" Ling Han smiled faintly. Yang Jun had hired someone to kill him. He still hadn't settled the score with the other party. It was just that he didn't care about Yang Jun at all. Therefore, there was no need for him to be so fierce. In the future, he would just find a chance to stomp him to death. "What, does your family own this place?" he said indifferently. "Don't think that just because you have some achievements in martial art, you can come to the headquarters and behave atrociously." Yang Jun snorted. He looked disdainful, but in reality, he was very jealous. Back then, Ling Han had driven Tuoba Tianhuang off the altar and replaced him. That person was just as famous as him and Zhong Yangbi. After all, the 3 of them represented different directions. But after coming to the capital, although he could still be considered a talent, he had lost the halo of a genius. The capital was full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. His talent could not be ranked in the top 10 in his age group. But what about Ling Han? He defeated Hu Yang 3 times and rose to power. He already had the title of second in Hong Tian Steps. Hong Tian Steps, that monster. Facing that person, even Yang Jun had to kneel down and write the word respect. Because Hong Tian Steps was an array genius, he had long obtained the qualifications to become a high-level array master. It was very likely that he would improve in a short period of time and become a grandmaster. In the whole of Xianbei country, how many array grandmasters were there? 2. Therefore, you deserve to be called second in Hong Tian Step. Ling Han looked at Yang Jun and naturally knew what he was thinking. In reality, if his current position was 100, then Yang Jun would at most be 7 or 8. The 2 were not on the same level. He didn't need to be angry at all. He just needed to find a chance to kill him. "Who are you? What qualifications do you have to stop me?" he asked calmly. "Today is a big day for my headquarters. What is an outsider like you doing here?" Yang Jun coldly said. He knew that the distance between him and Ling Han had already been shaken off, but to be able to say something to Ling Han at this time, It would make him feel better. What's all this noise about? Don't you know what day it is today? A middle-aged man walked over with a displeased look on his face. Greetings, Grandmaster Ju. Yang Jun hurriedly bowed respectfully. The other party was a mid-level array master. Although he would definitely be able to surpass him in the future, he had just arrived and was afraid that others would make things difficult for him. Thus, he was very humble. This middle-aged man was called Ju Shen. Although he was an intermediate array master, he was very narrow-minded. He nodded his head and smiled at Yang Jun. This young man would have great achievements in the future, so he didn't want to offend him. This guy wants to force his way in. Yang Jun immediately turned around and pointed at Ling Han. Ju Shen looked at Ling Han and sneered, "Young man, do you think this is a place for you to watch a show?" He thought that Ling Han came because he heard that the headquarters was going to have a competition today. Ling Han shook his head. "You two are talking to yourselves. Why didn't you consider your own intelligence?" Previously, when he came to become an array master, he didn't encounter any trouble at all. That was inconceivable to him. Could it be that his halo of hatred had disappeared? But today, he could prove that his ability to attract hatred was still top-notch. He didn't even need to open his mouth to make people attack him. Since that was the case, then let's fight. Thus, Ling Han retorted back. Ju Shen's face couldn't help but darken. He felt his chest becoming a little stuffy. Those words were too vicious, it made him feel uncomfortable. You. He pointed at Ling Han, wanting nothing more than to rush up and strangle Ling Han's neck. Ling Han smiled faintly. His fighting ability was still the same as before. Should he consider learning a roaring technique in the future? That way, he could shout and shout at the opponent right away. He didn't even need to make a move to make his opponent lie down. Move. He dusted his hands and continued to fire. A good dog doesn't block the way. Don't not know the basic rules. How dare you? The veins on Ju Shen's forehead were throbbing, and his nostrils seemed to be spewing fire. Who are you? Tell me, who are you? I will kneel for you for a day and a night. He's called Ling Han. Yang Jun took the chance and immediately jumped out. Ling Han? Ju Shen was startled. He seemed to have heard of this name somewhere before. Whatever, he didn't care. A young man who wasn't even 20 years old, what kind of reputation could he have? I'll give you one last chance. Kneel down or I will make you regret it, he threatened. Ling Han didn't try to defend himself. He just quietly turned on the optical computer's recording function and said, "Grandmaster Ju, right? You don't distinguish right from wrong, and you immediately threaten me. Is this befitting of your status? So what? I don't like you, so I want to step on you and suppress you. What can you do?" Ju Shen said arrogantly. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Aren't you afraid that I have some shocking background and will trample you into *T? Damn, what a vulgar fellow." Ju Shen did indeed reveal a trace of hesitation. There were many rich second generations with shocking backgrounds in the capital, and he seemed to have heard of the other's name. Could he really be a descendant of some rich family? He bullied the weak and feared the strong. He didn't want to offend any rich family. However, which rich family had the surname Ling? Grandmaster Ju, this guy is a refugee from the tiger's den. Yang Jun exposed him. How could he let Ju Shen be scared off? Although they hadn't spent much time together, he knew that Ju Shen was incomparably fierce when he met someone weaker than him. As long as the other party had a bit of background, he would immediately cower. He was a classic example of bullying the weak and fearing the strong. When Ju Shen heard this, he immediately felt humiliated. F***ck, a refugee from the tiger's den actually dared to boast in front of him. His legs almost turned to jelly. "I won't kill you today. So you're a refugee from the tiger's den? Haha, I was almost scared by you." Ju Shen laughed coldly. There was a hint of anger in his embarrassment. So what if he's from the tiger's den? Are you looking down on him? Ling Han deliberately asked. As expected, Ju Shen immediately said, "A bunch of lowly commoners. They should all die in the beast tide. Living is just a waste of food. Enough." Ling Han nodded. Just this sentence alone would be enough to make this guy suffer the consequences. Pack, he suddenly reached out and slapped Jushin's face. Although Jushin was a mid-level array master, his strength had only just stepped into the blood transformation realm. How could he be a match for Ling Han? Under this slap, his entire body was sent flying. He somersaulted a dozen times in the air before falling down in a graceful posture. F***CK. Yang Jun was dumbfounded. Ling Han was still as ferocious as ever. He even dared to make a move in the array headquarters. But he immediately smiled. In this case, Ling Han would definitely not be able to escape death. Reading on the phone is more refreshing. Chapter 3298. BQG6, CC BQG6. CC Rebel, you want to rebel. Jushin jumped up. Ling Han didn't use much power in this strike, or else he would have turned Jushin into dregs with one slap. Ling Han dashed over and slapped him again. Pa, Jushin was sent flying again. You insulted the refugees of Hidden Tiger City. Hitting you is already a light punishment, he said indifferently. Jushin was about to go crazy. Although Ling Han controlled his power very well, one slap after another still made him feel pain. He felt his teeth shaking. The key was that this was the entrance of the headquarters, and there were so many people coming and going. How was he going to live in the future? You're dead. He gritted his teeth. If he didn't kill Ling Han today, he wouldn't be surnamed Ju. Yang Jun was quick-witted and had already gone to call people. Wave after wave of people walked out. There were young array masters who came to participate in the competition, old array masters who accompanied them, and array masters from the imperial capital. Today was the busiest day in the headquarters. It's this brat. Just because he has some ability, he came to our headquarters to be impudent. Yang Jun pointed at Ling Han and shouted. Instantly, all the array masters felt the same hatred for the enemy and revealed their anger. Who is so daring to bully the head of the Formation Dao headquarters? Not to mention Ling Han, even Hongtian Bu wouldn't dare. Ling Han saw that it was about time and smiled. Everyone, don't misunderstand. I'm also an array master. Fut. Yang Jun immediately choked. This guy was also an array master? What kind of joke was that? What did he think array masters were? Did he think he could become one just because he wanted to? So what if he was talented in martial art? Did that mean he had some achievements in the field of arrays? There was indeed such an example. Hongtian Bu, his talent in martial art made all the other geniuses pale in comparison. He even reached a high level in the field of arrays. He was so monstrous. However, Ling Han definitely couldn't be a second Hongtian Bu. Just say that you're an array master. Yang Jun shouted. Ling Han smiled and said unhurriedly, if you say I'm not, then I'm not giving you anything. He paused for a moment and then continued, this is a very simple matter. Won't you know once you check? That's right, someone went immediately. My name is Ling Han, Ling Han kindly reminded. Even if you're a formation master, this is too much, someone criticized. Ling Han shook his head and said to the man, if someone cursed the entire city you came from to die, what would you do? That person was stunned for a moment before immediately saying, I'll definitely slap that bastard. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he naturally had to straighten his back and not say anything cowardly. Ling Han nodded and said, well said. He pointed at Jushin and said, this fellow actually dares to spout such filthy word. He turned on his optical computer and started playing the recording. When the crowd heard this, they all shook their heads in their hearts. Jushin was trapped in his own cocoon. He actually said such words, no wonder he got beaten up. At this moment, the person who went to check on Ling Han's background also returned and said with a strange expression, he's indeed an array master. Since Ling Han was also an array master, then it wasn't a conflict between the martial art world and the array world, but an internal conflict. And obviously, Ling Han was in the right, who asked Jushin to say those words. Ch. So what? Yang Jun woke up from the shock of Ling Han being an array master and shouted, just because he's an array master, he can go against his superiors and beat up an intermediate array master? The crowd couldn't help but nod. If everyone didn't follow the rules and went against their superiors, then wouldn't it be a mess? Ling Han shrugged and said, "Can't help it, I'm just a hot-tempered person." He looked at Yang Jun and grinned, "You have to be careful." This was an undisguised threat. Yang Jun couldn't help but be stunned. Ling Han clearly had an attitude of stepping on him, and he really didn't seem to have any other way. He was an array master, so was Ling Han. In terms of talent in martial art, Ling Han was hundreds of streets ahead of him. If the two of them were to have a conflict, who would the Array Association stand on? Ling Han walked over, patted his shoulder and said in a low voice, "Take a few more breaths now. I can see that in the near future, you'll be a dead man." Yang Jun's face instantly turned pale. Ling Han was trying to kill him. To be honest, he definitely couldn't beat Ling Han. In an instant, he made up his mind. From today onwards, as long as Ling Han was in the imperial capital, he wouldn't take a step out of the Array Association. Ling Han clapped his hands and said, "The competition is about to start. Everyone, hurry up and get ready. Don't you want to get a good result?" That's true. Everyone left. As for how Ling Han should be punished, that would be decided by the elders of the headquarters. They didn't need to interfere. Ling Han, on the other hand, operated the optical computer and uploaded Jushin's previous comments onto the internet. Hihi, doesn't he know that he's the ancestor of conning people? Everyone entered the headquarters of the Array Association, which was on the left side of the imperial capital map. The headquarters of the Alchemy Association was on the right side of the map. Beyond that was the vast wilderness, which was why the headquarters occupied a huge area. They came to a place that looked like a training field. The ground was filled with sand. There were many people, but none of them made a sound. This was the holy land for array masters. Now that they were going to compete here, naturally everyone was excited and their blood boiled. Someone reported Jushin's matter. The elders discussed it and decided to start the competition first. They couldn't be affected by it. As for the punishment for Ling Han, they could discuss it slowly. There was no rush. Let the competition begin. The chairman of the Array Association personally hosted the competition. He was Niu Huaqing's senior brother, Chen Hao. The competition used an elimination system. The winner would advance to the next round while the loser would have to come back next year. In a competition of array Dao, it was a competition of array Dao. To an array master, there were two main points in array Dao. One was to set up the array and two was to break the array. Therefore, if two array masters were to compete, one array master would lay down the array, while the other would decipher it, and then they would exchange places. Whether or not one could break the array, how long it would take, the difficulty of the array and the time needed would all affect the result. So there wouldn't be a draw, even if both sides broke the other's array or neither side broke it. There were over 100 array masters participating. Because of the age limit, they were all beginner array masters. If Hong Tian Bu came, he would break the record. He was already an advanced array master. Although Ling Han had the ability of an intermediate array master, he was only a beginner array master. The reason he was willing to participate was because of Niu Huaqing. Otherwise, it would be enough for him to have the title of a pill master. Arrays could be his trump card, so there was no need for him to reveal it. Half a day later, it was his turn. His opponent was a short man who looked to be around 26 or 27 years old. "I'm older, so I'll let you go first," the man said. Ling Han didn't mind. He casually waved his hand and 17 array foundations landed. Under his mental power, the array was formed. Damn. Seeing this scene, everyone was astonished. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3300. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC. Under the suppression of absolute power, nothing could stand in its way. Everyone was dumbfounded. They were in the midst of an array Dao competition. You destroyed the array with a single punch, should that be considered a pass? Success or failure? The referee didn't know how to judge either. He looked at the big shots hesitantly. This had never happened before, because array masters' individual combat power was too weak. No one could rely on their own strength to break an array formation. However, Such a freak had appeared. Vaguely, everyone seemed to see another person, a monster that should not exist in this world. Hong Tian's step outrageous. An advanced array master immediately said unhappily, "We array masters naturally have to use upright methods to break arrays." "What does this mean?" "Brother Cow, I don't dare to agree with you." Another advanced array master said, "The competition doesn't have any rules on how to break the array. Since that's the case, it's within the scope of the rules. Of course, it's fine." Array Master Cow couldn't help choking. Indeed, the rules didn't specify how to break the array. This was because, firstly, it was a convention, and secondly, the individual battle prowess of an array master was low. Who would use such a method to break the array? He hurriedly said, "An array master uses an array to break an array. Does this need any special explanation?" I strongly disagree. In fact, I would like to suggest that this person be disqualified from the competition. Ling Han couldn't help but feel annoyed. "I have no enmity with him, why are you targeting me like this? Since the rules didn't state it, it's naturally possible." The second array master also insisted. More and more advanced array masters joined the fray. Some thought that Ling Han could pass, while others thought that this didn't reflect Ling Han's array Dao abilities at all. How could he mess around like this? No one could convince the other, and the number of people on both sides was about the same, so it was very difficult to convince the other. The low-level array masters looked at each other and gritted their teeth. So many advanced array masters were actually fighting so hard for a mere primary array master. Just based on this point, Ling Han could be proud for a lifetime. In the end, everyone's gaze landed on Chen Hao. Chen Hao waved his hand, immediately silencing everyone. After some thought, he said, "Using brute force to break the formation is indeed not in line with the objective of the competition." As soon as he said that, the opposition immediately smiled. But Chen Hao continued, "However, since we didn't say anything in advance, we can't disqualify Ling Han just like that. Let him try again. This time, only formation path methods are allowed." Since he, the president, had spoken, who would dare to disobey? Only Yang Jun had an ugly expression on his face. That was because that punch had destroyed the foundation of his formation, causing cracks to appear. This naturally destroyed the formation patterns. How was he going to set up the formation again? He had no choice but to report the matter. There was no time to remake it on the spot. Fortunately, there was an intermediate array master who was teaching his disciple the same array, so he borrowed the array base and let the array master personally lay it down. Ling Han began to break the formation. He strode in, and suddenly, shio, 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 a murderous aura circulated and began to attack him. He smiled indifferently, not dodging or dodging. How could a mere meridian opening expert's attack injure him? Very quickly, he found the node and used the absolute obstruction array to cut off this killing array. The array was instantly broken. The entire process took no more than 3 minutes, which was highly efficient. It was time for Ling Han to set up the formation. With a casual flick, he still laid down an illusory array, a formation within a formation. Yang Jun entered the formation and began to break it. But very soon, cold sweat broke out on his forehead because he still could not find the location of the node. A few minutes later, his eyes lit up. He laid down the absolute obstruction array, but he discovered that the array was still operating. Another fake node. He kept trying but kept failing. After over a dozen times, he finally succeeded. The fog dispersed, and he reappeared in the light of day. It was just that before he could rejoice, the judge announced his failure because he spent a full 40 minutes. Yang Jun was dazed. His greatest confidence came from array Dao. Previously, no matter how monstrous Ling Han's performance was in martial art, he always believed that he would not lose. But now, in the field that he was most skilled in, he was ruthlessly defeated. His confidence was shattered into pieces. But Ling Han did not give him an extra glance. Why would he need to take this kind of small character seriously? It was precisely this kind of disregard that made Yang Jun clench his fists tightly, as if his blood vessels were about to burst. He was at any rate one of Tiger Crouching City's 3 great geniuses. But now, The other party could not even be bothered to give him an extra glance. How could he endure this? Ling Han, Ling Han, Ling Han, he roared in his heart, swearing to take revenge for this enmity. Ling Han overcame all obstacles along the way, finding it hard to meet an opponent. Although what he laid down were only elementary array formations, it was an array within an array. The difficulty of cracking it was 10 times harder than a single array formation. Just an hour, the number of people who could crack it were incomparably few. When it was close to evening, Ling Han also successfully made it into the finals. The finals were set for tomorrow. Although the finals were all elementary array masters, it was the annual finals after all. They could not be too sloppy. No one mentioned the matter of punishing Ling Han again. What a joke! How could they bear to punish such a monstrous genius? Moreover, who asked Jushin to have a cheap mouth? What topic was the most sensitive? Demonic beasts wreaking havoc. Yet, he still had to spout nonsense in this aspect. Wasn't that just courting death? It was even better now. It was already reported on the internet. Perhaps even His Majesty the Sacred Emperor would find out. Even if he did not die, he would still lose a layer of skin. Under such circumstances, who would speak up for him? Ling Han did not return to the academy. Anyway, the finals would be held the next morning, so he did not have to make an extra trip. All he cared about was the prize. However, this kind of competition was more of a kind of glory, so the prize was not the treasure fruit that could increase cultivation or spiritual power that Ling Han hoped for. Instead, it was a remnant of an array formation, and it was even a handwritten copy. Although it was an incomplete copy, it still had great research value. Ling Han also learned about his opponent in the finals. It was an array formation genius from Yingfeng City named Zhong Feiyang. It was said that he was really a genius. He did not care and fell asleep. The night passed. When the sun rose, Ling Han naturally got up to cultivate. Unfortunately, when he stopped cultivating, he did not absorb any purple qi. This should only be obtained in famous mountains and great rivers. After eating, he slowly walked to the battlefield. Today was the finals, so there were naturally many onlookers. However, they were all array masters, and no outsiders were invited. This was because the others could not understand it, especially the martial artists. They had been looking around and walking around for half a day, not fighting at all. Who would be interested? Ling Han entered the battlefield and saw his opponent. Zhong Feiyang was really a young man in high spirits. He was tall and slender, and seemed to be shrouded in a layer of divine light. Toss a copper coin to decide who will set up the array first, the referee said. He looked at Ling Han first. Do you want heads or tails? Heads, Ling Han said casually. The referee nodded. He tossed a copper coin, and it landed on the ground with a clink. It rolled twice, but it was tails. In other words, Zhong Feiyang would set up the array first. It was more refreshing to read on the phone. Chapter 3301. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Cisa Zhong Feiyang smiled. Then I won't stand on ceremony. He moved his hands and threw out array foundations one after another. There were more than 30 of them, but his speed was not slow at all. In just half a minute, the array foundations were all set up. Then, the formation lines lit up, indicating that the formation was already in operation. Hey! What kind of formation needs 36 formation bases? Could it be another formation within a formation? Something's wrong. One of the intermediate array masters suddenly stood up and hissed, "This is the Wild Thunder Array." What? Those who heard his words were all shocked, because the Wild Thunder formation wasn't a low-level formation, but a mid-level formation. What does that mean? Zhong Feiyang was an intermediate array master. But in the registration of the Array Master headquarters, wasn't he still a beginner? It's very simple. Although he can make intermediate array formations, he hasn't been certified. Naturally, he's still a beginner array master. Someone said. This was indeed a very simple logic. However, who would be able to become a mid-level array master and not go through the certification to raise their status? It was like the blood transformation realm was completely different from the meridian opening realm. Zhong Feiyang is so young. 25 years old, becoming an intermediate array master at the age of 25. Other than Hong Tianbiyu, who else could compare to him? Even Chen Hao nodded his head. Such a young intermediate array master was really rare. It could be said that it was hard to find one in 100 years. Forget about Hong Tianbiyu, that person should not even exist in this world. I really didn't expect there to be an intermediate array master below 30. Ling Han didn't lose unjustly. He met an array genius. Everyone sighed. Intermediate versus beginner, this was an absolute suppression. Do you still want to break the formation? Asked Zhong Feiyang indifferently. The wild lightning formation possessed terrifying killing power. Even blood transformation experts would be killed if they were trapped within it. The difficulty of breaking it could be imagined. Ling Han smiled and said, "All right, I'll give it a try." Everyone was speechless. Was this really something that could be tried? Once you entered the formation, as long as the formation didn't stop, the lightning would continue to strike. It would be extremely difficult for you to escape. Although the individual strength of the array master was not as good as that of a martial artist, once the array was set up, the result would be different. Ling Han strode forward and took the initiative to enter the formation. Immediately, lightning flashed and jumped between the foundations of the formation. Then, a bolt of lightning quietly formed and fiercely struck towards him. However, Ling Han was already prepared. He raised his right hand in front of his body. The lightning struck. Although there were dazzling sparks, it did not hurt him at all. This could injure someone at the 3 changes of blood transfusion, but Ling Han's strength had long surpassed the 3 changes. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Lightning was still shooting out from every corner. Ling Han casually waved his fist and blasted the lightning into sparks. He captured the pulse of the formation, which could restore the position of the nodes. Currently, there were not many intermediate spirit arrays, only 17 of them. Ling Han had dabbled in all of them, so he naturally understood the violent thunder array. It was just that every person who set up the array formation would make changes. 1,000 people setting up the array formation meant that there would be 1,000 nodes. Therefore, this needed to be deduced from the operation of the array formation. In less than 3 minutes, Ling Han threw out the blocking array. He did not expect to have an opponent who was an intermediate spirit array master. Therefore, he did not prepare an intermediate blocking array. Instead, he used a beginner array. However, as long as he found the right node, he could completely block this array formation for a few seconds. This was enough. It meant that he had found the node. Sure, the 3 foundations fell and were activated by Ling Han. Instantly, the violent thunder stopped, but only for a moment. Lightning flashed again. Pa, pa, pa. The 3 blocking array foundations were blasted until they were full of scorch marks. The entire place was silent. What? Ling Han actually broke the violent thunder array? A beginner spirit array master could actually break an intermediate spirit array? Indeed, breaking the array formation was easier than creating the array formation. However, it could not be so easy that it was a level higher. Unless, a thought flashed through everyone's mind, but they immediately shook their heads. That was impossible. You're also an intermediate spirit array master, Zhong Feiyang exclaimed. If not for that, how could Ling Han possibly break his array formation? Moreover, it was only 3 minutes. Even most intermediate spirit array masters could not do that. Ling Han smiled and said, "Probably. I didn't deliberately study this problem. This was an act." Everyone wanted to ridicule him. There was actually someone who didn't know his own strength and wholeheartedly focused on the array Dao. Then, one day, he suddenly wanted to go out for a walk, only to find that he was already invincible. How low was the possibility of that? Zhong Feiyang took a deep breath and said, "All right, it's your turn." Ling Han nodded and went to the side to retrieve his own array foundations. There were quite a few of them, and it was naturally not convenient to bring them along when breaking the array formation. However, he had to change his strategy. Zhong Feiyang was actually an intermediate spirit array master. If he used a primary spirit array against him, it would probably be broken in 2 or 3 moves. He reached into his bag. Actually, he had used his consciousness to communicate with the Qi-nurturing gourd and retrieved many array foundations. Intermediate spirit array, raging flame array. With his own strength, he no longer had to fear anyone in the blood transformation realm. Thus, he naturally had no interest in offensive intermediate spirit arrays. However, he had still created them in case of emergencies. He had not expected that they would be put to use so quickly. Ling Han returned to the battlefield with the array foundations. Then, he waved his hands repeatedly. Instantly, like a goddess scattering flowers, 36 array foundations were inserted into the ground at the same time. Then, he used his psyche power to activate them, and the array formation was immediately formed. "Please," he said to Zhong Feiyang. Zhong Feiyang was naturally not afraid. He strode into the array formation. Instantly, raging flames burned, turning the area enveloped by the array formation into a sea of fire. He waved his hand casually, and immediately, 5 array foundations appeared beside him, protecting him. This could only last for a short period of time, but Zhong Feiyang believed that this short period of time was enough. He immediately began to break the array formation, searching for its nodes. Time passed bit by bit. Zhong Feiyang kept trying, but he failed again and again. He was indeed a genius in the art of arrays. He had only tried 11 times, and he had already broken through the blazing flame array. However, the time he had used was as long as 13 minutes, so he naturally lost to Ling Han. Ling Han's victory was indisputable. Chen Hao was overjoyed. 2 geniuses had appeared in the array Dao. As the president, he was naturally happy that there was a successor. After a while, he would bring Ling Han and Zhong Feiyang to find Old Man Qi from the Alchemy Association headquarters. He would let that old man see that even without the Hongtian steps, there were still countless geniuses in array Dao. Ling Han had originally wanted to return to the academy immediately, but the Array Dao Association headquarters still had to issue him and Zhong Feiyang proof that they were intermediate array masters. Thus, they stayed here for another day. At night, he flipped through the prizes he had received. This remnant array was called Precipice. The array foundation was very special. It was not made of stone or metal. Instead, the array patterns were directly carved onto clothing. After wearing it, the array formation would automatically activate when it was attacked, forming a powerful defense. Reading on a mobile phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3302. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CCA formation worn on the body. It could be played like this. Ling Han's thoughts immediately diverged. Since that was the case, then he could naturally carve formation patterns on armor and create an invincible army. The upper limit of the Precipice formation's defense was as high as the opening aperture tier. However, because the formation was broken, the defense naturally decreased, and it could only display the power of the engravement tier. This was extremely shocking, because there was only one opening aperture tier now. But looking at the requirements to draw the formation patterns, Ling Han couldn't help but be speechless, because it required the blood of an engravement tier as ink. It could be a beast, or a martial artist. Ari, did Ling Han have to find Heaven Traversing Commander or King Kong Commander and ask them to give him some blood? No matter if it was formations or alchemy, after reaching the high level, the biggest difficulty was how to get the materials. Ling Han put away the formation, not thinking about it for now. He'd think about it after he got the blood of an engravement tier. The next day, just as Ling Han was about to return to the academy, Zhong Feiyang came over and chatted with him for a while. Zhong Feiyang was full of admiration for his formation abilities, and wanted to discuss formations with him. Ling Han really didn't have the time, so he politely declined, making Zhong Feiyang very disappointed. Ling Han couldn't care less, he had too many things to do now. Returning to the academy, Ling Han continued to cultivate diligently. On the way to pick the red fruit, Ling Han had already deduced the indestructible Heaven Scroll for the blood transformation tier. Limited by his tier, it might not be the strongest body refining technique in the world, But now that martial art was in the early stages, the indestructible heaven scroll shouldn't be a match. He ate honey every day to increase the strength of his body, and his stamina also increased crazily. Normal 5 changes secret power should be around 2 million kilograms, but Ling Han estimated that his limit should be able to reach 5 million kilograms, and adding on his stamina, it shouldn't be a problem to reach 10 million kilograms. This power was too terrifying. At that time, Ling Han could even lift a medium-sized warship with one hand. He already had a lot of money in his hands, so Ling Han started to buy medicinal ingredients to cure the poison in his body as soon as possible. If the poison was not cured, he would feel as if someone had placed a knife on his neck. Some students came to visit, hoping that Ling Han could make a rallying cry and establish a new faction. With his current reputation, he believed that many people would be willing to join him. However, Ling Han was not interested at all. After experiencing so much in the Yuan world, would he still be attached to power? After becoming a gang leader, a lot of his energy would definitely be taken away. How could he be as free as he was now? The little maidservant was still in seclusion, trying to break through to the blood transformation realm. She didn't even have time to serve him. Not only was Ling Han not used to it, even the perverted pig was the same. He stared at Ling Han. The perverted pig snorted at Ling Han, which meant that Lord Pig was hungry and that he should go and get some food for him. Ling Han chuckled. "Roasted suckling pig. Do you want to eat?" The perverted pig immediately became furious. Its 4 legs were flying, and it was about to rush over to fight Ling Han. However, it only ran a few steps before it slowed down. It panted heavily and then lay on the ground, paralyzed. Ling Han shook his head and smiled. "Who asked you to eat so much? Look, your 4 legs are so short." The perverted pig rolled its eyes at him. It was just so lazy. What could it do, bastard? However, Ling Han was indeed a little hungry, so he took out a goat from the essence-nourishing gourd. This was a demon goat that he had killed in the mountains. It had the cultivation of the blood transformation realm. Not only was it delicious, it was also very beneficial to martial artists. He had already eaten half of it before, and now there was still half left. After starting a fire, Ling Han started to roast the leg of the goat. This was the most fragrant thing. Smelling the fragrance, the perverted pig immediately started to drool. "Look at you." Ling Han shook his head. The perverted pig pointed at Ling Han with a hoof and grunted. It meant to say, "Look at yourself, you are not much better than this Uncle Pig." The sound of a stomach rumbling could be heard, but it was neither Ling Han nor the little perverted pig. The man and the pig turned their heads at the same time. They saw a person lying on the wall of the courtyard. Her eyes were fixed on the roasted goat on the fire, and she was very focused. That person swallowed her saliva, making a very loud noise. Ling Han was surprised. This person whose stomach was rumbling with hunger and who could not help but swallow her saliva was actually a young girl. She looked to be only 14 or 15 years old. However, the problem was that Ling Han did not notice when she appeared on the wall. If not for the rumbling stomach, he would still be in a daze. How did a 14 or 15-year-old girl walk so close to him without his divine sense? "Focus on roasting, don't burn it," the young girl suddenly said, her voice crisp. Ling Han's mouth couldn't help but twitch. "Is this what you should be thinking about? Shouldn't you first explain why you are lying on the wall of my house?" He had countless points to complain about, but he did not know where to start. "Okay." Ling Han nodded and focused on roasting the leg of goat. After a few more minutes, the smell of roasted meat wafted through the air. It was even more tempting. The young girl couldn't help but stretch her neck. Her entire upper body was in the air, and then with a bang, she fell from the wall. She patted her butt and got up. Nothing happened. She was not afraid of strangers. She strode over and sat down, reaching out to grab the goat. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. "Where are the adults?" "Dead," the young girl said expressionlessly. She had already taken the leg of goat and started to eat it. The little perverted pig immediately became angry. He stretched out his hoof and pointed at the young girl, looking like he was going to risk his life. "You dare to steal Lord Pig's meat? You must be tired of living. Most importantly, your breasts are so small. This is what Lord Pig hates the most, you bastard. Ling Han looked at the young girl and frowned. This young girl gave him an unfathomable feeling. He couldn't tell the level of her cultivation at all. If she was just a normal person, how could she sneak up on him without him noticing? But if her cultivation was above Ling Han's, then that was even more inconceivable. She was only 14 or 15 years old and was already at the ultimate bone realm. Wasn't that even more monstrous than Hong Tian Bu? If there really was such a monster, wouldn't her name have already shaken the world? He looked at the young girl who was wolfing down her food and said, "Little girl, what's your name?" "Little girl?" The young girl put down the leg of goat and tilted her head to look at Ling Han. "I'm more than enough to be your mother." What an unlikable girl. Everyone said that one's mouth was short after eating from others, but she was actually taking advantage of him. The perverted pig tried to jump up and take a bite of the goat meat, but the force of his jump was too gratifying. He was only 3 inches from the ground when he fell, far from touching the meat. The young girl seemed to be interested. She lowered the meat a little, and when the perverted pig was about to take a bite, she raised it again, causing the perverted pig to bite empty air. She was so happy that she laughed loudly. She still said she wasn't a child. Ling Han didn't ask any more questions. He just watched quietly. She couldn't have just run over to eat a meal of goat meat, right? After a while, the young girl seemed to be tired of playing with the pig. She casually threw the leg of goat that was left with only a bone on the ground. She said, "Little brat, that weapon nurturing tree was planted by me." It was more refreshing to read on the phone. Chapter 3304. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Ling Han pressed his finger on it, but a red light flashed. This meant that he did not pass and was forbidden to enter. The guard immediately snorted and said, "Don't cause trouble and leave immediately. Otherwise, I will inform the Imperial Guards to arrest you." The Alchemy Association headquarters was one of the most important places in the Imperial capital. Anything that happened here would definitely alert the Imperial Guards. Ling Han frowned. After the incident at Hidden Tiger City, his identity was indeed not properly sorted out. He did not have the habit of venting his anger on others, so he settled for the next best thing. "Then I will certify as an alchemist." The guard looked at him with an expression of guarding against a thief. One moment you said you were an alchemist, and the next moment you said you wanted to certify as an alchemist. Wasn't this contradictory? However, he could not prohibit others from certifying as an alchemist. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "All right, register here and I will report it for you." He operated the optical computer and had Ling Han enter his information. Ling Han filled it out truthfully. There was no need to hide anything. After the guard entered his information, he immediately checked Ling Han's information, Emperor Capital Academy student. He heaved a sigh of relief. Since he was a student of Emperor Capital Academy, the possibility of him harboring evil intentions was almost zero. He gave Ling Han a temporary certificate and pinned it to his chest. Then, he allowed Ling Han to pass. Ling Han entered the Alchemy Association headquarters. This place was naturally astonishingly large, and there was even a large forest behind it. He came to the front desk and entered his purpose for coming here. Certifying as an alchemist. The receptionist glanced at him and couldn't help but reveal an expression of shock. To be certified as an alchemist at such a young age, his future was boundless. The receptionist was a rather beautiful woman. She was originally very cold, but when she heard that Ling Han wanted to be certified as an alchemist, she immediately became extremely enthusiastic. Alchemists had a high status and could earn a lot of money. Which woman didn't want to marry an alchemist? Thus, seeing how young Ling Han was, this receptionist's heart was naturally moved. She served tea and water, trying her best to leave a good impression on Ling Han. Of course, Ling Han was unmoved. After a while, someone came to inform him that he could proceed with the certification. However, because low-rank alchemists needed to prepare their own ingredients, Ling Han first went to buy a set, and then followed. This naturally caused the 3 primary alchemists in charge of being witnesses to be extremely displeased. One of them was a bit more unkind, and immediately expressed his displeasure to Ling Han. Ling Han didn't pay any attention to him and only looked at him a few more times. "What are you looking at?" "Remember, I'm called Lu Bu," said the low-rank alchemist. He was extremely arrogant. Because his uncle was a mid-rank alchemist, he had always been very arrogant. He didn't even care about other low-rank alchemists. Ling Han smiled faintly and began to concoct pills. 2 hours later, the pill was done. Lu Bu's expression was somewhat unsightly. He had hoped that Ling Han would fail, but the other party had succeeded. This was equivalent to slapping him in the face. "Congratulations." The other two cupped their fists towards Ling Han with smiles on their faces. Ling Han nodded and said, "I want to continue to be certified as a mid-rank alchemist." The two alchemists who had been congratulating him couldn't help but be stunned. Was there such a certification? There had indeed been such pretentious people in the past, but they had never been certified as low-rank alchemists. Only when their strength reached the mid-rank did they amaze the world with a single feat, and they were viewed as the model of pretentiousness. But how many people could endure this kind of loneliness? They could clearly enjoy the treatment of a low-rank alchemist, but they had to endure it for 10-odd years, or even dozens of years. Furthermore, Ling Han was too young. He looked to be only 18 or 19 years old. How could he possibly become a mid-rank alchemist? However, the certification of a mid-rank alchemist was the basic right of every alchemist. As long as one was a low-rank alchemist, it was fine. So the two naturally had no reason to refuse, and could only report it to their superiors. "Haha, someone like you wants to be certified as a mid-rank alchemist?" Lu Bu couldn't help but mock. Ling Han swept a glance over him, and said, "Whether you're despicable or not, what does it have to do with you whether I'm certified as a mid-rank alchemist or not? There's no need for you to be a witness, and it's not up to you to agree or refuse. Why are you jumping around so happily?" The veins on Lu Bu's forehead bulged. He swore in his heart that he would definitely make Ling Han suffer so much that he would wish he was dead. Of course, he didn't even think that Ling Han could possibly become a mid-rank alchemist. With his uncle's reputation, it was still rather easy for him to deal with a low-rank alchemist. Very soon, 3 mid-rank alchemists arrived. This was the imperial capital, and though the number of mid-rank alchemists could not be said to be overwhelming, it was at least 10 times more than in other cities. Now that they were in place, Ling Han took out his own ingredients. In any case, the pill refined was his. He skillfully picked through the ingredients, then activated the formation and began refining. 2 hours passed, and he naturally succeeded easily. The 3 mid-rank alchemists appraised it, and all revealed shocked expressions. Not only did he succeed, but the quality was also shockingly high. Hiss, such a young man who was not even 20 years old had actually become a mid-rank alchemist. Look at them, which one of them was not in their 50s or 60s? Comparing oneself to others would only cause one to die of anger. Meanwhile, Lu Bu felt a strong chill. He had never expected that Ling Han could really become a mid-rank alchemist. This was too outrageous, too outrageous. He naturally regretted it. Why had he gone to provoke Ling Han? He really had a foul mouth. However, he could not lower himself to beg for mercy from Ling Han. In any case, his uncle was also a mid-rank alchemist, and was not weaker than Ling Han. Moreover, he was much more senior, so as long as he did not provoke Ling Han in the future, the latter would not dare to do anything to him. Ling Han smiled, and said, "I want to continue to be certified as a high-rank alchemist." No one spoke, but everyone looked at Ling Han as if they were looking at a madman. Was this not a joke? This kind of gaze, this kind of reaction, Ling Han had already seen it many times. Who asked him to be the alchemy emperor? He could always create miracles. Nobody could stop an alchemist from getting certified as long as it was within the rules. Therefore, someone immediately went to invite a high-rank alchemist. This required some time. Even the headquarters only had about 10 high-rank alchemists, and all of them were researching alchemy. They were the kind that would lock themselves up for days and nights at a time. After an hour, 3 high-rank alchemists finally came over unwillingly. If that mid-rank alchemist did not succeed, They would definitely give him a good beating for daring to interrupt their research. Pre-president, someone suddenly exclaimed. Instantly, everyone turned to look at a short old man. This person was the president of the Alchemy Society, Qi Liandong, the only alchemist in the capital, and also in the entire Black North country. Qi Liandong nodded slightly at the crowd. When he heard that someone was going to be certified as a high-rank alchemist, he was naturally alarmed. Especially since this was a youth that was not even 20 years old. He was filled with anticipation. Greetings, President. The three high-rank alchemists also bowed respectfully. It could be said that every high-rank alchemist in Black North country had received Qi Liandong's guidance. Without his selfless guidance, they would not have their current achievements. Therefore, Qi Liandong's reputation was very, very high. Young man, do you have confidence? Qi Liandong asked Ling Han. End of chapter. Phone reading is more refreshing. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.